Good. Well, thank you for joining us here on the Not Anybody's podcast. I'm privileged to be talking to Joe Saunders, who does have, I think, the biggest self-defense podcast in the world. So that's very cool. Is that right, Joe? Is it the biggest one in the world?
I don't know. It depends what you call a self-defense podcast. There's a bunch of martial arts podcasts that are bigger, and there's some firearms podcasts that are bigger. But I don't know if anyone bigger than us is talking about all the things we talk about. So I kind of hedge my bets and say the world's biggest holistic self-defense podcast.
Okay, not like the world's biggest holistic self-defense podcast that comes out at like 2 minutes past X on a
run by an Australian. Their releases on a Monday. Yeah.
Yeah, the one with 4 daughters, etc. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, you're Joe Saunders, and that's great. And hopefully, people that are looking at this will have heard of you. You're coming to the UK, which is kind of partly my fault, because I love what you do, and we need more of it over here. And I just want to talk a little bit about why you're coming, and ask you a couple of questions about the content, because I passionately believe that people should be studying what you're putting out there and integrating it in their curriculum, whether they're martial artists or self-defense practitioners, or, in lots of ways, anybody that's working professionally can really benefit from these particular skills. I'm going to talk about, why, and then ask you to explain a little bit more. I feel that there's a massive problem in martial arts and self-defense. There's lots of problems, but one is that the lip service that's paid to soft skills. Most people that are teaching that kind of thing, they know that soft skills are really important. If they understand what soft skills are, that's a big bonus, because a lot of people teaching self-defense are just teaching physical skills, which is a really bad thing. They don't have a curriculum for those soft skills, however. It tends to be that before they're teaching the physical, they will say, you should have tried to avoid this situation. You should have tried to de-escalate this situation. But if all of that has failed, then here are some physical skills to help bail you out. But if you ask them what their curriculum content would be on prevention, awareness, de-escalation, then they're kind of in the dark with that. So that's really your niche, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's right. I mean, it's like you, it's a gap that I discovered, I guess, just through my own training and realizing that I didn't really know how to de-escalate someone deliberately. I'd pulled stuff off. Those who know my story, I worked in the indoor work for a while, and I quickly realized I'd be able to talk someone out the door resulted in a lot less incident reporting and paperwork than having to throw them out the door. So I had kind of developed some skills, but there wasn't really a curriculum for it. I mean, there was books like Verbal Judo by George Thompson. There was Jeff Thompson's book, The Art of Fighting Without Fighting. There was a few others since that time. I mean, Rory Miller released Conflict Communication. Ellis Amder's written a bunch of books on de-escalation I wasn't aware of at the time. So there are some good books out there. But in terms of a program or a curriculum that you can plug and play into an existing martial arts or self-defense curriculum, there really wasn't anything, and I think it's a massive gap that I've been happy to fill. I kind of see it almost like as you were sort of introducing it, I was thinking, this is kind of like asking a karate practitioner pre-2000. How do you stop a wrestler from taking you down, or how do you stop a rugby player from tackling you? And it's like, well, you just just don't get taken down, or don't get that close, or you elbow in the back of the spine, and that stops the takedown, because in theory that should work. But no one really knew how to train takedown defense. Unless you're a wrestler or you're a judo player, perhaps you might know. But people in the general martial arts didn't really drill it. They didn't have a curriculum of how to drill takedown defense. And now, fast forward 25, 30 years of mainstream UFC, everybody has some takedown defense, I would hope. And this is kind of like, it's just plugging that gap. Here's another gap of something we've given lip service to, not because of malice or because of ignorance, but just because no one really knew what to do with it. They knew it was important, but didn't know what to do with it. And hey, here's something fun and exciting.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So I think that's kind of the gap I've tried to fill, and just be able to give people who don't have experience, who don't have the luxury of being able to spend 5 nights a week in hostile situations to figure it out, to give them a system that I believe works.
Yes, although I would like to point out it's not simply a buy bouncers, full bouncers kind of
It
system.
absolutely is not. No, it absolutely is not. In fact, it works better without that.
Yeah.
But it will, if you are a bouncer out there looking to upgrade your soft skills, I can help you there too. But it's absolutely a regular person conflict management strategy.
Definitely, and as I say, useful in the workplace, useful in the family, and all sorts. And what people were getting out of this, I mean, you're here for a 2 and 3 day course, like so. All the skills plus certification if people want to do certification. We'll talk about that in a bit. But it's a full curriculum that's a pick up and play curriculum. So you can really, as an instructor like I am, you can take that material, you can see how to teach it, you can adapt it and put it into your classes really, really easily. And it's, I've got like two really serious reasons why people should do that. And number one is, because then you've got that it's nice and easy to do and say, yes, I am indeed teaching avoidance, awareness, de-escalation. I'm actively teaching those things, and people should do that because it's the right thing to do. And I wanted to ask you about the example that you, when we've talked about this before, there's the whole thing of if you've got a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And if in your self-defense teaching, you're saying, you could do these things, you should really do those things. However, if all of that's failed you, then you should do this. Then people tend to go to those physical skills a little too early. And you've got some examples of that from your own experience, right?
Yeah. So the example I think you're drawing at is an organization I was working with that had an armed security force, which is unusual here in Australia, but they had a team of armed guards, and to their credit, they spent an awful lot of money and time making sure that their guards were expert marksmen. They spent a full day on the range basically every month, which is 6 times as much training as our general duties police get. So, I mean, for a private security force to be that well trained was very, very unusual. But when I was looking at their training, I asked the question, okay, so given the circumstances, how much training are these guys doing on, say, using their batons and handcuffs, which they're also carrying? How much training are these guys doing with empty hand techniques? How much training are these guys doing with verbal de-escalation techniques? And the answer was basically zero. There was one session out of 12 every year, which was anything other than lethal force. Now, I understand that because the learning curve, the perishability of firearms manipulation and marksmanship is very high. So I understand the urgency and the desire to spend more time on range. But I said, look at this from a coroner's point of view. Let's say that one of your guards pulls a firearm and kills somebody, whether justified, not justified, whatever, it happens. If there's any doubt whatsoever about whether that was a good shoot or not a good shoot, the first thing that I would do as a prosecutor would be to pull up your training records. And if I can see that you've spent 120 hours this month per guard training them on the range and absolutely nothing on less than lethal force skills, well, what would you expect that guard to do in the heat of the moment when they're fearing for their lives, other than to go to the thing that they've spent 120 hours practicing? So if we apply that to martial arts or to self-defense, if all we're teaching is physical skills, surely you cannot be surprised if your student uses a physical response instead of a non-physical response, if that's all you've taught them to do. And the 5-minute lip service before you get into the physical drills doesn't cut it when it comes to people reacting under stress.
No, and that's the second point that I wanted to make about this, which is that any kind of verbal training that happens before physical, looking at preemptive striking or anything like that, tends to be framed around how can I legally, retrospectively justify the preemptive strike. So it's focused on legality and justification, fully focused on that, as opposed to ethical de-escalation and how can you actually genuinely avoid the situation. So not necessarily, it kind of dehumanizes the other person who might just be, somebody who's mentally ill or somebody who's genuinely having a horrible day. And there could be ways that you can prevent that, even however violently they're presenting. There could be ways that you can stop that and the consequences, but that people are not being trained to look for that.
Yeah. Well, look, I firmly believe that this was a reframing for me. Like, I grew up in the martial arts, went into combat sport, worked on the doors, worked as a bodyguard, was in protection. That world of a physical response was very much ingrained in me until I realized that wasn't the way that adults are supposed to solve problems in most contexts. So I started looking elsewhere. But the one of the big paradigm shifts for me was to not look at violence or aggression as a conflict to be won, but rather a problem to be solved. And once you start solving problems instead of trying to win, well, all of a sudden all the doors open up, right? And the challenge for a lot of combatives and physical self-defense instructors is that their students are coming to learn to hit things, right? It's stress relief, it's physicality, it's exercise, it's social elements, it's all those things, right? And I think a lot of instructors, not only do they not know how to teach this stuff well, but if they do know a little bit about how to do it, they're not sure how to make it engaging and entertaining. They're not sure how to make it a drill. They're not sure how to make sure students enjoy themselves. And they just can't, like, can we just get on with the hitting stuff? So even if they're trying to do the right thing, they might be dressing it up in a way that's almost apologetic, like, sorry, guys, we have to do this because we haven't done any soft skills for a while. I'm going to get through this as quickly as we can, and then we'll get into the hitting things, right? And as soon as you do that, people switch off because they're just waiting for the hitting things. So there's a whole rationale and a teaching methodology behind it to enable people to think about how to solve problems. And you and I were talking offline. I've had some people that want to host me saying, yeah, we don't want to do too much theory, or we don't want to do too much of the soft skills. Can we do some physical stuff too? And absolutely, there are physical skills throughout, but you can find a whole bunch of people in your own country that can make you tired. You can find a whole bunch of people in your own country that can teach you how to hit things, can hit with power. There's a lot of really great combatives instructors in the UK. I don't think there's as many people in the world that do the soft skills the way I do them. So, and that's a bit of a humble brag, but at the same time, like please, I'm in country. Use me for what I'm good at, not the stuff that you can get anywhere.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, I'm basically, and we're going to wrap this up, because if everything that we've said hasn't interested the people that we're trying to reach, then they're probably not the people that this course is for anyway. If you are interested and you want to know more, then Joe's doing 2 weekend masterclasses on communication and all of those, so dealing with social violence, antisocial, etc. All really cool, and you should definitely get involved. And if there's more stuff that he's doing, which will be excellent fun, I mean, you shouldn't miss the ginger sumo off that's going to be happening in Birmingham as well. But all of that,
the boxing sumo combination, yes,
which will be like a world-class event without a doubt. But anyway, you guys are perfectly capable of looking things up and asking questions, and we're both available that you can ask questions. And we're talking about the end of March, 26th, 27th, you're in Oxford, and then Birmingham the following weekend for the ginger crazy stuff. And then the weekend after that in Cambridge, the same opportunity to do the communication and the violence prevention stuff, which I think everybody should do. And if you think that too, then you should book on.
Couldn't agree more.
Fab. Thank you. All right, I'll stop that.